Happy Friday, December 18th, 2020. Welcome to the 3 Things I Learned at Saas, Sports, Tech, and Live Events. This week, a question we got inbound. The amount of feedback and interaction with 3 Things has been way beyond what was ever anticipated and is very much appreciated. And the question we got was, how did you know when it was time for you to go out on your own, and how did you do it? Because it's very scary. So I can only speak to my own experience, but I will give the 3 things that I learned in starting my own business as to why we did it and when. Number 1, fear of regret was the strongest power for us when we started the business. We talked about it a lot during the early years. Just the fear of us waking up one day, being in our 50s, sitting in an office working for somebody else and wondering what would have happened if we went out and tried to do this ourselves. So much so that we had tried a couple of businesses as side hustles before this, which we'll talk about in a second. You know, I grew up watching my parents do all the right things. My mom and dad both were valedictorians of their high schools. They graduated summa cum laude. They got multiple degrees, only to watch them get laid off 7 times during my formative years. And then we had that external influence of watching Lester Burnham hate his job so much in American Beauty my senior year when we were working our way into the working world. That fear of burying my talents in the ground, the parable from Matthew, was just too much. And so there was a lot of positives to why we wanted to do it. You know, we wanted to be our own bosses, we wanted to make our own mark, we wanted to create something new. But that fear of regret was what really pushed us to jump in with both feet. So that's number 1. Number 2, how did we know it was time to start our own business and what we do? The piece of advice I would give is it cannot be a side hustle. I know there's a lot of suggestions out there in stories, even Mark Benioff at Salesforce, where it was a side hustle for a while. But if we had done that, we would have failed. We did goof around with some businesses on the side as we were formulating Ticket Manager. And when you don't have that commitment, you don't get to see just how much you'll do to survive. So what I would suggest is very simple. Pick a date that you're going to remove the safety net. Take about 6 months of living capital and set it aside. This is untouchable, something that you can go to if things don't go your way. We didn't do that, it was a big mistake. Then you can work as a side hustle, but you can only do it for so long because those are late nights and long weekends, and you don't want to be disingenuous with your current employer. We made sure that when we did it, we stayed number 1 on the board. We made sure that we were hitting revenue numbers and revenue targets. And then once that day came, we jumped in with both feet because as a startup, look, you're doing 3 jobs at once. You're selling during the day, you're marketing in the evening, you're doing your books and administration at night and on the weekends. And more importantly, as Mark Cuban points out often, somebody else is probably doing the same thing full time and trying to beat you. Side hustles are just that, they're side hustles. I know there's some success stories, but I personally wouldn't do it. Or Peter Griffin put it so eloquently in a great clip, I'm ready to die tonight, what are your plans? That's number 2. Number 3, the question we get the most when we're around friends and family or on the holidays is, how did you do it? And the truth is, I don't know. The answer I keep coming back to is that we were just willing to make a lot of mistakes because, you know, once we jumped in, the economy collapsed and we didn't have another choice but to continue. There were probably some circumstances where we probably wouldn't have continued if we weren't in the economic collapse. That willingness helped us learn, and, you know, as we shared in the 3 Things last year, we gained a lot of good judgment. You know, good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment. So in the end, I would say if you do make the leap, make sure that you do it the right way with your current employer. Make sure that it is not a side hustle. Make sure that you know your why and why you're going to do it. And most importantly, be willing to make a lot of mistakes and learn from them. That's it for this week. Everybody had a great week. We'll see you next week.